Dear brothers and sisters, I acknowledge the divine Sai love, resident in the hearts of each one of you. Om Sai Ram. It's a great privilege and pleasure to be with you today, and I must say that it brings back wonderful and warm memories of my fellowship with you all in the organisation over so many years. In the early years, coming to Swami, 1985, 1986, the first advice Baba gave me was that I should do public work. And although I was involved in the organisation for many years, once my health circumstances clipped my wings, I went back to being closely involved in public activities. And that, in a way, has kept me away from more frequent visits to see you and enjoy the warmth of your love and your company. 100 years of love. I think we all realise that the most magnetic force that we've ever experienced in our lives is being close to Swami. I have never experienced anything that would come anywhere near the joy, the ecstasy of receiving a loving smile from our beloved Swami. The power of his presence is extraordinary. It's inexplicable. Many people say to me, Neville, you must have great faith in Sai Baba. And I say no. I have a deep belief through the privilege of direct experience. It's not a question of faith. It's a knowingness that comes from that direct experience. The tears of joy flow so frequently whenever we had that chance to engage with him. On one occasion, early in the piece in my first visit, I arrived in Puttaparthi with a chronic illness. I had a chronic duodenal ulcer that's been with me for 8 years. And during an evening bhajan, Swami looked at me. I was in front row, and Swami looked at me, and he showered me with my first experience of divine love. I didn't know it at the time, but the next day, my symptoms of my ulcer had disappeared. And when you have a chronic ulcer, it's with you every moment. And in a later interview with Swami, he said, when I looked at you and he touched his stomach, your spot was gone. So I had one of the greatest blessings of being healed in that way, because I had been reduced to just shuffling and holding my stomach. So these are some of the transformational experiences. But it's almost as though that is, put that aside, there's nothing more powerful than his love. In interview, we found that Swami would often get into such minute detail in people's lives to demonstrate that he knew absolutely everything about them. That was very off-putting for me, because one has not necessarily lived an exemplary life. I'm sure we can all know patches in our life that we weren't pleased with our personal conduct. And so I was always very apprehensive about this. About being in his presence, I was just a little uncertain. It wasn't so much that, but I was in awe of who I knew him to be. And in my last interview, actually, it was the day after Swami's 80th birthday. He took me into the inner interview privately, and my last interview, but it was the first interview where he demonstrated to me that he is my dearest friend. He gave me a great gift. And although very little was spoken, it was the most joyful experience that I had had. In mid-95, Jill and I went to in Christmas 95, Julie and I went to put a party. And up until that time, every time we had been to Prasanthi, we'd get 2 or 3 interviews, personal interviews. And on this occasion, after 2 weeks there, not one glance. And, you know, I was suffering from serious withdrawal symptoms. It was really quite something. And on the last morning, I was sitting well back, and Swami must have been 30 metres, 40 metres away, with his back to me. And I closed my eyes for a moment, and I said, Swami, you've given us the grace of your attention. Give your time to others, but at least look at me. As I opened my eyes, he spun around and looked at me intensely for about 5 seconds. Not a glance, not an acknowledging smile. I had prayed for him to look at me, and he did that. And you know how difficult it is to find someone in the room when there's 1,000 or a few thousand people there. It's impossible. That experience cemented in my mind an awareness of his omnipresence. And as a result of that, it was one of my most transformational visits. Swami was often very light and joyful, and he knew how to prick balloons. I was on the veranda on one occasion. What do you do, sir? He said, someone near me, a lawyer, Swami, a lawyer, came the confident voice. Ah, a lawyer. There was one other occasion where Swami was asked him, where are you from, sir? America, said the fellow. And he turned to a lady very modestly dressed with her daughter, obviously a very poor circumstance. And he said, do you know in America they build houses for cars? He just knew how to, you know, if you build, I know if I'm in the building industry and development industry, and it costs about $100,000 to build a house for a car in an apartment building today. And yet people are living in their cars. I'd like to tell you one story that Professor Kasturi told me years ago. And I thought this is a story that goes over time and over vast distances. A young engineer had, during World War II, he'd been sent off from India to London to study munitions. And it was during the Blitz. And this fellow was studying in the morning, studying in the afternoon and evening, but working in the morning. And when the air raid sirens came, everyone was required to go down into the underground train tunnels. And he was missing out on his studies. So he said to himself one night, the sirens went again and he would have to go down and spend an uncomfortable and noisy night in the tunnel. So he said, and the bombs haven't come anywhere near us, so I'll just close the light out with my blinds and keep studying by a candle. And he was feeling uncomfortable with himself, but he knew he had deadlines and he knew he had to study. And the sirens were going, and suddenly there was a bang on his door. "Hey, you in there, open up!" And he jumped up with his heart beating and ran to the door. And a bomb warden came in. The fellow, there was their duty to make sure everyone went underground. And the bomb warden said, "What are you doing here? You must get down to the tunnel immediately. You should know better," he said in a particular voice. And the fellow grabbed his belongings and apologised and rushed out. And just as he'd got into the tunnel, the bombs rained down all around. And when he came out at night, in the morning, the building where he was completely destroyed and burned. So he knew the bomb warden had saved his life. So he went down to the nearest bomb warden station to find the warden and thank him for saving his life. And they said, "I'm sorry, sir, we had no one in that precinct last evening. We don't know who it was. Must have been someone from another district." It was always a bit of a mystery for him. So he graduated after the war, went home to India, and he was working in northern India. And he went on a break into the mountains with his wife, and he was driving. And suddenly a truck came round the corner on a steep ravine, and their car, to dodge the truck, they flew off over the edge. And he heard his wife call out, who was a devotee of Rama, "Rama, Rama." And in a flash, he found himself sitting on a rock, seeing the car end over end down into the ravine. And he looked around and then saw his wife sitting further up. And his wife said to him, "I called out to Rama, you should have more faith." Some years later again, he was at a conference in Bombay. And it was a Saturday, the conference wasn't operating that day, and he was in a two-storey up at the first level in a little apartment looking down on the street, and he saw a flood of people going past. And he went to the window in 20 minutes' time, and the flood of people going in this direction. So he went downstairs and asked someone, "Where's everyone going?" They said, "Oh, there's a great saint from southern India speaking at a stadium a couple of blocks away." Well, he didn't have anything to do, so I'll go along. Huge crowds, and just as he got there, the whole field was full. Massive crowd, and the gate was closed. Wire fencing. So he moved along further. There was a dais. He could see close to where the dais was inside. And then a car came after a while, and this orange-robed figure got out with fuzzy hair. And he was pointing around and very directive about what happened, and the space had been left in front of the dais. And he pointed in his direction. Baba pointed in his direction. He'd given instructions to let people in that side gate and fill up the space in front. And he was swept in with that little group. And Baba gave a talk, and he thought this was a lovely talk. And then Baba came down and walked up to him and said, "It's wonderful to see you again, sir." And he said, "I'm sorry, I've never heard your name. I don't know you, I've never heard your name before this day." He said, "I was your bomb warden." And he gave the date and the time. "You should have known better," he said in the same voice, and he recognized immediately. And then he said, "And on the mountain, your wife called out to me, 'Rama, Rama, you should have more faith,' just as his wife had spoken to him." He fell at Baba's feet, knowing the power of the omnipresent, and here was a man, here was Baba, who knew all about his life decades ago, what had occurred. And Kasuri said that that man was living in Puttaparthi in his retiring years, in full service there. I think they're just so powerful, those stories. But could someone give me an indication when I've got 2 or 3 minutes left, please? Baba's real legacy for me is his teachings. Of course, if we've experienced his love directly, that will always stay with us with great intensity. But for me, the teachings have just been so powerful and just a wonderful gift for mankind. He's given instructions in so many fields. He's talked about our personal conduct incessantly, about how we should behave, and that we create our own life experience by the way in which we conduct ourselves personally. If I approach the world in a loving way and I approach everyone lovingly and courteously and respectfully, the world will reflect that behaviour back to me. If I'm irritable, then that behaviour will be reflected back to me. So Swami said very clearly, we create our own life experience. He gave great talks on leadership. Humility and truth are the key elements. He gave talks and very clear instructions on parenthood. He elevated motherhood to the highest status, and in fact his first tertiary institution was for women. Tertiary institution for educational institution. He gave clear direction to students about their duty. Doctors, some wonderful discourses he's given on that, to teachers, to soldiers, and on service itself. I think that his advice on service, of course, in the Western concept, in the culture that I come from, big seems to be better. And so when I first started to think about service, I was thinking bigger projects, until I came across Swami's advice, which made me understand that service is a spiritual practice. He said, a kindly gesture of appreciation to someone who's serving you is an act of service equal to the highest and largest project that you can conceive. Spirituality is about recognizing not only our own inner divinity, the truth of our being, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but it's about recognizing that in the other. Swami said, see me in the eyes of everyone you meet. I am in you in the form of the 5 values. Everyone is inherently good. Each one of us is goodness, truth, and beauty. Certainly, we will make mistakes, but they are errors, Swami said. We're not bad. We have no right to judge another. To me, these teachings are extremely elevating, and they've helped me navigate through life. Swami told me to do public work, and I went back in local government and became mayor. And he gave me 3 personalities on this new council that were in opposition, that had one objective, and that's to bring me down. I was a property developer, I chased gurus, and I was mayor, and that was fair game, apparently. And I had great difficulty, and I was trying to be loving them and courteous, love the opposition, but it wasn't working. And I went over for a visit to Puttaparthi in the middle of that term, and Swami called me in quite early. And he shook his finger and said, always thinking spiritual, spiritual, spiritual. Confusion. First common sense, then spiritual sense. You have to live in the world. That brought balance back to my role as mayor, and things got better. Things got much better. I insisted on everyone conducting themselves properly. I was being unacceptably tolerant to their behaviour, thinking that I was trying to be loving. But I had a duty to do, and Swami tells us to follow our duty. Dear brothers and sisters, it's a great joy to have been allowed to be the gift of coming to Sai Baba. But it's been equally joyful for me to have had the chance to associate with his devotees, because there I do see this beauty, goodness and truth in each of you. Om Jai Sai Ram.